All right. Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order the February 10th regular school committee
Recording in
meeting.
progress.
I am not Chris Bresky, which might shock you all. I'm not Chris Bresky. I'm Emily Prenner. I'm the vice chair. Unfortunately, Chris had a death in the family, so I am running the meeting this evening. First, we are going to start the meeting the way that we always do, which is with the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight, we are very excited to have Rory Wallach from the Ward Elementary School, who is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Rory is a bright and energetic fifth grader at Ward who brings creativity and kindness to everything she does. Rory spreads her joy wherever she is, whether it's dancing about the classroom or performing on stage, girl after my own heart. Always ready with a bright smile, Rory is a friendly helper, especially to younger students, making sure everyone feels included and supported. Rory embodies Ward School's values by showing respect to others, spreading kindness, and never giving up when faced with challenges. With a love for learning and a big heart, Rory makes Ward School a better place every day. So we will ask Rory to come to the microphone. And as we do the Pledge of Allegiance, there's no obligation to participate. But for everyone who is willing and able, please rise to recite the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Rory.
Did you have anything you wanted to say, Rory?
Yeah, if you have something to share, feel free.
About Ward School and being a student there?
Sure. Something that I like about Ward School is I like that it's like a pretty small school, but I've made a connection with like a lot of people there. And I know everybody, and all the teachers and everyone are really nice, and we've built like a really good community.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rory. Thanks so much.
Thank you
Good
so
job.
much. Yes, you did an excellent job. Have you heard from Amy yet? Nope. Okay. So we're going to move on to public comment. We always appreciate hearing from the public. And while you will not receive us in real time, please know that we take all comments we receive seriously. And tonight we have both in-person and virtual commenters. And I think we're going to start with two virtual speakers, if they're there, Stephen. One is Oscar Zoffer, I think it's Zoffer, and the other is Ina Jansdottir.
They're coming in now.
Great, thank you so much. As always, please state your name and your address. You get a warning at 2 minutes and 30 seconds from Tamika. And when you are ready, please feel free to go ahead.
Do you guys hear us?
We can.
Okay, sorry, we're just struggling here with the camera. It probably doesn't matter. We can. Yes, there we go.
Okay. There we go. Hi, I'm Oscar Zoffer. I live on 156 Warren Street, and I'm a 10th grader at Newton South High. I'm here today to talk about the Williams School playground. Having an inaccessible playground structure separates kids, while there's already a difficult social element to advocating for yourself and participating as a person with a disability. From personal experience, kids will often get left behind or left out during a situation on the playground because of the structure, and that's near impossible to control. Facing barriers on the playground separates kids socially and emotionally in a way that truly makes those excluded feel left out of the group, a place they spend half their day, 5 days a week. When I was in elementary school, during tag and similar games where kids used a whole playground, kids would run to the structure and all of a sudden I wasn't really part of the game anymore. Instead, I was a bystander watching, waiting for the game to go back to the pavement. I vividly remember sitting outside for minutes, watching people on the structure, waiting for them to come down or waiting for something to happen, waiting for someone to notice I wasn't having fun up there with them. Personally, I was able to advocate for myself to be included, at least to some degree. But for many, that can be a very daunting and difficult task. I don't know who, if anyone at all, is showing these kids how to advocate, but a completely inaccessible structure definitely doesn't show these kids that they deserve to play. Instead, it just says that they have no power. So why bother advocating for themselves at all? Who is there to show these kids that they deserve to be included? Who is there to show these kids that exclusion doesn't have to be the norm? And what adults around them acknowledge this reality? I know that there are disabled kids at the Williams School now who need an accessible play structure. But also please consider future students who will need those same accommodations to participate in recess. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next is Ema, who's right there.
Hi, my name is Ema Johnstetter. I live on 156 Warren Street. I'm speaking today as the parent of a 10th grader at Noon South, a wheelchair user with 6 years experience navigating the challenges of the inaccessible play structure at the Mason Rice Playground. This lack of access to his school environment resulted in him being separated from his peers on a regular basis during recess, creating yet another barrier in his life. Out of all the challenges my son faced as a young disabled child, this one was the most painful to watch. A man-made barrier to joy and possible friendships that no parent wants their child to experience. For the last 2 years, I have spent a lot of time talking about and advocating for improved accessibility and inclusion at the Williams School Playground in various places within the city and NPS. As part of my duties as COD co-chair, I helped the Williams PTO in 23 when they came to us for funding so they could buy equipment to improve accessibility on their playground, totaling around $10,000. This amount was of course not enough to address the larger accessibility improvements needed, but I believe it at least kickstarted the updates that were made in 23 and 24 and got additional funding through an MOD grant as well as free cash from the city. These updates, however, did not address the play structure, which is entirely inaccessible to children who have mobility challenges, the children in the Reflections program. I know many of us have wondered how this could have happened, that a program for disabled students could have ended up at a school where it was known that they would have no access to the playground. I must believe that if the Reflections parents had been consulted, if the teachers at NECP who have intimate and professional knowledge of their students' needs had been consulted, and if the city's Commission on Disability had been called upon for expert advice, and the urgency would have been believed and understood, this very avoidable mistake would never have happened. I urge you to come up with procedures to make sure this never happens again, and that you always consult experts with lived disability experiences when big decisions are made for our disabled students. The reality is there's no reason anybody would know what accommodations are needed when there is no lived and professional disability expertise present. Mistakes will likely continue to happen, and our disabled students will continue to be negatively affected if
30
disabled voices are ignored when decisions are made. We need to do better. Please help us fix this mistake. Please find a suitable solution for the children in the Reflections program at Williams. And please, please, always consult the disability community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ema. We're going to go to a couple of in-person speakers. First is Ryan Normandin.
Ryan Normandin, 616 Boylston, Newton. Tonight, Superintendent Nolan will be presenting a 7-page memo on multi-level classes. I'm disappointed by the degree to which it includes false information, misleading statements, and disrespects the expertise of the district's own staff and students. The memo begins by demeaning articles written on the topic. Those I'm familiar with were written by educators and by students. My own mirrored the statement I made here on behalf of South's Faculty Council, in which my colleagues and I shared experiences and data earned from 3 years of living with this problem. Both an editorial and an opinion piece in South's The Lion's Roar, a nationally award-winning newspaper, also called for the rollback of multi-level classes. I struggled to understand how, and I quote, "It is not productive to learn about programs by reading these articles." The memo goes on to paint NPS as a mishmash of a district where nothing's aligned, there are no standards, and everyone's doing their own thing. It claims that nobody agrees on what multi-level means, despite precise language in our petition that was explicit about which multi-level classes we believe should be rolled back: STEM, world language, non-special programs. The memo claims nobody has agreement on what levels mean, and nobody has common standards with which to make recommendations. In fact, we've recommended students successfully for decades, whether those placements were made in the tracked model or the multi-level model. Each course team understands quite well what the differences are between our levels, is required to use similar grading practices, and uses common assessments to place our students. Are North and South aligned? No, and that is a problem. But it is not an excuse to wring our hands, pretend we simply don't know anything about anything, and refuse to solve smaller problems that have simple solutions. The memo asserts that it's a misconception that a majority of staff in any building feel one way or another. Weirdly, I have a petition containing signatures from nearly every STEM and world language teacher at South urging that multi-level be rolled back in those departments. But the memo has an answer for that. It's asserted that many of us didn't understand what we were signing. This is not the first time it's been implied that our educators are so naive and so devoid of agency that they will simply sign something or vote something because they are told to. It is deeply insulting. The petition calls for multi-level classes to be rolled back while we all collaborate to build something better. Do some believe that could be better structured, better supported multi-level? Yes. That in no way undercuts the ask of the petition to roll back these classes in the meantime to stem the bleeding. Finally, the claim is that the district cannot simply put STEM and world language classes back to single level, which is weird because 3 years ago the district snapped their fingers and we had multi-level with no supports. We already use common standards to recommend students for a particular level within multi-level classes. Each course team already agrees on specific indicators of proficiency on which these decisions are based. We already have common assessments that each course team within each building uses to make recommendations. To claim that no problem can be solved until the two high schools are fully aligned, allowing perfection to be the enemy of making things better, I obviously disagree with the refusal to fix such a pressing problem until
30 seconds,
2026.
Ryan.
But what I have a larger problem with is the misinformation, insulting implications, and outright falsities contained within this memo. The portrayal of NPS as a mess that needs to be fixed, the framing of educator and student expertise as mere feelings to be discarded. We have a great school system, despite over a decade of central administrators and elected officials ignoring our input and blundering about because of the work we do. It is deeply frustrating to have this memo continue in the tradition of misleading the public and disregarding educator input. You can disagree with us without demeaning us. We expect and deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Nathaniel Orenstein, and if you want to bring anyone else up as well, make public comment together, you're welcome to do that as well, if you'd like. So if you don't mind sitting in the chairs and speaking into the microphones, that would be wonderful. You have 3 minutes just to repeat.
Yep.
Please state your name and your address.
My name is Nathaniel Orenstein from 75 Homer Street. And before I'll speak, I'll hand it over to 3 students at Newton South High School.
Yeah, hey, I'm Owen Butler. I'm at 38 Wyman Street. And I'm one of the 3 captains for the current Newton South Ultimate Frisbee Club at Newton South.
There would be Alex, 16 Greyhoor Drive.
And I'm Kalen Ho, 15 Ashcroft Road.
What do you think about all?
Oh, yeah. So I've been playing Ultimate since around 6th grade, since a little bit before the pandemic. And it's been my main form of sports or like physical activity that I've had for a while. And honestly, I fell in love with it a little bit. That's why I've worked so hard and fought for the captain position that I had this year. And we've been working really hard this year, especially to fight for some funding for Ultimate, especially because these past 2 years that I've been at South have been a sharp difference, or stark difference, sorry, from when I was at Brown, actually, which has an Ultimate team, which is funded by the school with coaches who are also teachers. And they have professional practices and jerseys and all this stuff. And then I go to South, and it's like, yeah, you can join our club, but we don't have a coach. Maybe ask some teachers if they want to also do it for free. And yeah, that's my experience. If you guys also want to talk.
Yeah, same with Owen. I started in 6th grade, and coming to South, there wasn't really a team. So several kids kind of restarted the club, which had kind of fallen out of favor with the school. And one thing that really set Ultimate apart, for me at least, was the kind of integrity and honesty that all the players have, and how this kind of carried over to all of the team members. There's no ref in Ultimate Frisbee. It's all based on honest calls by the players and them working together, even with their opponents, to kind of make the right judgments on the field. And that's really strengthened kind of my opinion of sports in general.
Yeah, I agree with what they've said about general characteristics of ultimate frisbee. I think my experience is slightly different because I started in elementary school while living in China, and it's a very small sport there. And I expected that coming to the U.S., I'd have a lot more opportunities to play at a more competitive level. But unfortunately, since entering entering into Newton South High School, I haven't really had the opportunities I was hoping for. So, yeah, that's really on it.
The enthusiasm of the students is clear, and they're much more articulate than I could ever be. I'm here really to speak on behalf of the dedicated group of parent volunteers who've worked really hard over the last several years to bring this club to the state tournament last year. And we know what we're lacking, but we will continue to be there as resources for the team and for these students. We are grateful to the
Seconds.
we're grateful to the principals of the high schools as well as the athletic directors for bringing this proposal forward, and we hope it passes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to go, Stephen, to another online speaker, Angela Murgia. And forgive me if I butcher your name. I apologize profusely in advance.
She's coming in.
Great, thank you. Stephen, we can come back if that is helpful.
She seems to have just disconnected.
Okay.
Oh, there she is. Hold on. No, I think she's in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, just a reminder to mention your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Angela Murgia, and I live at 7 Livoli Road in Framingham. I am a physical education teacher at the Newton Early Childhood Program and the Reflections Program at Williams. I will be reading a statement on behalf of my colleague who could not be here tonight. Dear school committee members, my name is Ellen Vogler, and I am a special educator with the Elementary Reflections Program. The Reflections Program is a substantially separate program dedicated to supporting student access to meaningful, inclusive learning opportunities. I am writing to advocate for the urgent need to prioritize accessible playgrounds in our elementary schools, especially at the Williams Elementary School, where the Reflections Program is located. It is essential that all children have equal opportunities to engage in outdoor play, develop motor skills, and socialize with their peers. Currently, many of our playgrounds are not designed with accessibility in mind, limiting the ability of children with physical disabilities, sensory processing challenges, or other needs to fully participate. A lack of accessible play areas does more than exclude. It hinders social development, physical well-being, and can contribute to feelings of isolation. The parent community and educators are being asked what small fixes or additions can be made to existing structures. While minor adjustments may offer temporary relief, they do not tackle the root issue. The fact that many of our playgrounds are fundamentally not designed with children of all abilities in mind. This approach feels like a Band-Aid on a larger wound, and it is disheartening to see our schools continue to operate with playgrounds that fail to support the full participation of every child. Children with disabilities deserve more than just token accommodations. They deserve the same opportunities for play, socialization, and development that their peers enjoy. We cannot continue to ignore the need for properly designed, universally accessible playgrounds that allow all children to engage in meaningful outdoor experiences. I urge the committee to take action in ensuring that future playground upgrades or renovations include features such as wheelchair accessible swings, ramps, inclusive equipment, and sensory-friendly spaces. These features promote not only equity, but also a culture of acceptance, inclusion, and kindness within our schools. Accessible playgrounds are not just an investment in the physical development of our children, but in the overall social fabric of our school communities. Let's create an environment where all children have the chance to play and thrive. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much, Angela. Next, we're going to go to a group of day middle school students. You can come on up to the microphones.
Hi, my name is Durva Desai. I live at 1047 Washington Street.
Hi, my name is Samanvi Karnam. I live at 151 North Street.
My name is Sandhya Ganapati. I live on 10 Alberta Terrace. We are talking about like getting Diwali off as a holiday. As you know, it's one of the most important and celebrated holidays for the South Asian community living in Newton, and it is the Festival of Lights that is celebrated for 5 days, and families of many different faiths celebrate it. We never know the exact dates when the festival falls, as it's based on the Hindu calendar. This holiday is personally important to us, our families, and many members of the Newton Public Schools community who celebrate the holiday. Recently, the committee changed the school calendar to honor and celebrate the Lunar New Year. We are very happy that you have done this, as it acknowledges the importance of everyone's traditions. However, we are disappointed that Diwali was not included in that acknowledgement. The calendar working group surveyed groups of people and found that 89% of families, 86% of staff, and 85% of students in NPS think that celebrating Diwali is extremely important.
Inclusion is a value at Day Middle School and Newton schools, so we are requesting that you include Diwali in your holiday acknowledgement and consider making the third day of Diwali a day off from school. Other local school districts such as Westboro, Halston, Littleton, Lexington, and Acton honor Diwali with a day off from school. We hope Newton Public Schools follow these examples and give a day off for Diwali. Thank you so much for your consideration.
And so recently we've had a holiday for Lunar New Year, and it made me think, why don't we have a holiday for Diwali? And I know that other states like New York and New Jersey have Diwali as a holiday. Even Pennsylvania's whole entire state gets Diwali as a holiday. It was the first state to make Diwali a public state holiday. And although I know that we can't immediately make all of Massachusetts get Diwali off, but having Newton celebrate Diwali would show great respect.
All set?
Yeah.
Okay, good job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Enrico Rosero.
Enrique Rosero, 19 Garland in Newton. I want to add to the conversation you had last meeting about graduation requirements and competency determination criteria. First, one of the things that you all missed was the reason why Massachusetts voters elected to repeal the requirement that students must achieve a certain competency level on MCAS to graduate high school. It isn't that voters don't favor academic rigor or that they dislike assessments. What you didn't acknowledge is that the people of the Commonwealth do not like all the time wasted preparing for the test, administering the test, and above all, teaching to the test. Yes, there was also a question about fairness, but fundamentally the ballot was about the exaggerated burden placed on a high-stakes test. Second, during Mr. Levy's explanation, he stressed the fact that Newton residents have higher expectations than the rest, and therefore NPS should use graduation requirements to set a higher bar. I urge you to resist the temptation to impose additional hurdles and demands on graduating classes like thesis, graduation projects, internships, or service hours just for the sake to appear to be more demanding. Emphasis on mastering skills should be placed along the way on a rigorous academic curricula from K to 12, and not by putting extra pressure on high school seniors already on their way to college. Yes, Newton residents have high standards and expectations. This applies not only to our schools, but also to our elected officials. We, for example, expect them to show up. and avoid missing school committee meetings because during a sizable part of the year, they enjoy their retirement in Portugal or Australia. Rightly so, current graduation requirements do consider attendance to guard against chronic absenteeism. Beyond that, if we have confidence in the rigor of our academic program, just absolving the coursework should be guarantee enough that the students have met our expectation to graduate. I will hate to see song and dance added just because you feel the portrait of the graduate or whatever else needs to be used to virtue signal that we demand more. The achievements of our students in standardized tests, college acceptances, and adult life in general are proof enough of the high quality of instruction and our standards for excellence. Thus the deserved reputation of MPS. No need to get cute or creative with elaborated, dynamic, innovative competency determination criteria. Tackle instead the hard part. Fix the curricula, fix the building, and whenever needed, fix incompetent leadership.
30 seconds.
That's the more we demand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for only 2 more speakers. I apologize to speakers that I did not get to, but we have a half an hour set aside for public comment. Next is Toby Merrill.
Hello, my name is Toby Merrill. I live at 33 Wobbin Street. Our sons are kindergartners at the Williams School in the Reflections program. As you know, this is a program for students with extensive and complex needs. Newton has 2 elementary Reflections classrooms, both at Williams. Like the other students in his classroom, my son cannot walk independently. He can use a frame walker with significant support. His condition is progressive, which means that at some point his mobility and other abilities will decrease. Average life expectancy for children with his condition is 15 years. But right now, he loves to play. He's very social, he loves being among his peers, and he loves going outside into the playground. Overall, my husband and I have been so delighted with Reflections and with Williams. His teacher is extraordinary. You heard from her. She leads an amazing team. The principal has been welcoming and inclusive. We're glad to be part of the Williams community, even though we live across town. But my heart sank when I learned 2 months into the school year that the outdoor play structure is completely inaccessible. It requires climbing, doesn't have ramps or transfer platforms, ground level components, or other features that would allow children with walkers or wheelchairs, my son and his whole class, among others, to use it. My understanding is that educators raised the fact that the Williams playground is not usable by children with mobility impairments when the Reflections program was placed at Williams several years ago. We were surprised and dismayed. It's unfair and unlawful to deny children with disabilities the benefits of using the play structure, the benefits available daily to all non-disabled children across the city. Would you like to speak? I'm happy to skip the rest. No, you can continue. The next few years are our son's healthiest, the ones in which he will be most able to play on the playground at all. How could Newton have chosen to send some of its most significantly disabled young children who come from other neighborhoods and cannot speak up for themselves to a school where they cannot play outside with their peers and plan to do nothing unless parents of nonverbal kids who don't live nearby noticed and complained? I understand that playground structures are expensive, but is the cost greater than that of segregating and discriminating against this group of particularly vulnerable kids? We are here tonight to ask that you work with the city to make available to our sons and their classmates the same opportunity that you provide to every other kindergarten kid in the district, a playground with elements they can play on.
30 seconds.
We ask that you do this right away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Sarah Seru.
My name is Sarah Saru. My address is 11 Marshall Street. Good evening. My husband and I and our 2 children in middle school recently moved here from New Orleans, Louisiana this past summer. Factored into our decision to move to Massachusetts was the fact that the state is ranked #1 in education. Coming from a state that ranks as one of the lowest in the nation in education, we thought our kids here to start 6th and 8th grade might be a little behind. Although my girls never needed extra help in school, I figured I could look into getting them a tutor to bring them up to speed if necessary. After their first few days of school, they said they had already covered the topics in math last year, and I was relieved they were getting a review. However, now that we're into the school year, they said they're relearning what they learned already. My husband and I were surprised about this and ultimately disappointed. I figured they'd be fine, and just make it to high school where they could work ahead and take advanced placement classes. When I looked into it, it seemed that might not be available. Coming from a state that ranks in the bottom 10, we worried they'd be behind in Massachusetts, but now the concern may be that they are behind their peers in Louisiana. We have this small window of time to get our children ready for high school and eventually college, so that is why I'm here tonight to add my voice to those opposed to multi-level classes and in favor of advanced placement classes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment portion of the evening. And next, we move on to the superintendent's update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone, and thank you to all the wonderful student speakers who came tonight and their principals who joined them. Great job. First, I just wanted to sort of benchmark with the school committee about conversations that we had when we first started together a year and a half ago about how the district would need to lay down foundational benchmark assessments and have time and the routines of data analysis built into principal and leadership practice. And I'm happy to report to you that our first mid-year data review occurred with all principals, math and literacy coaches, central office staff, curriculum leaders, student service leaders to digest the results of our K-8 benchmarks for fall and winter and to assess growth in math and ELA for all students in K-8. Shortly, we will also have our grades 3 to 8 panorama, social emotional learning data, and other key metrics of student progress and growth. We look forward to making these mid-year and end-of-year data activities memorialized in our schedule moving forward, and we are currently working on an assessment schedule for K-8 that allows us every year to have a published cycle of assessments and then responses to that assessment data. We now have a common dashboard for all of our K-8 educators and administrators. And at the click of a button, we can disaggregate data by all demographics, schools, grades, and type. We can easily represent growth and achievement for every school, every student, every grade level, 3 times a year. And I include an example of that type of visual in the report that I gave to you. I have anonymized it so you can't, the purpose is you can see what we can do. We want you to know that we can look at how high growth and high achievement trends are in the district, and we can move backwards from district and try to replicate those practices across our schools. We have a March retreat with school committee on our calendar, and we intend to show you some of the data that is most meaningful as we anticipate inclusion in our annual report in April. So very excited to progress monitor that with you. Second, I wanted to just congratulate Jamie Yadoff, who is named as the Memorial Spalding new principal. While we sat here at 6:30, notices went out to the entire Memorial Spalding community, letting them know that their finalist was indeed made the final choice. And we are really excited to have her join us on July 1st as the new principal. She is an experienced principal, and her warmth and energy certainly won over all the committees that interacted with her. Thanks to Joanny Santa, the Director of HR, and Aisha Farag, the Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, who've been our partners in making sure that we hire all 3 of our wonderful principals. So on to Zervis and Byrne next. You'll hear from us on that. And then finally, I do want to give the community an update on multi-level classes. I promise I will not read you 7 pages of this memo, but I do feel for the purposes illustrated even here tonight, that the purpose of this memo is to dispel some of the misinformation that we even heard brought here tonight, and seeks to summarize meetings at both high schools with our educators and document the challenges that they have illuminated to us about our current high school leveling practices and our middle school practices, as well as our curriculum and training needs. Never to denigrate educators who have been trying to contend with extremely difficult set of circumstances and a lack of resources while we educate what is quite possibly the largest scatter of student capacity post-COVID that anyone has seen in education in our country. It's been a long road for every district to come back from COVID. And Newton Public Schools has some additional challenges that play into the multi-level classes and how our curriculum is designed. What we have learned is there is no multi-level class composition. There's huge variance within grade levels, within buildings, and within departments about what multi-level classes actually means. And our focus here is to build a strong, reliable future system where students receive the challenge level they want and are ready for in a systematic way so they can build their own goals and learning agency. Right now, we have a mysterious and varied path that is unclear to folks, which breeds the type of misinformation here and seeks to pit administrators against educators, which is not ever good for young people. Some teachers have kept data and statistics about multi-level classes and the changes since the pandemic in their own classrooms. But given the lack of district-wide training, consistent central office leadership, and vision related to curriculum assessment and lack of curricular resources available to the average Newton teacher, they are running themselves ragged simply trying to meet the needs of all students, whether they are in single-level classes or multi-level ones. So we have not been sitting at central office to learn about this program. We have actually worked extensively with the High School Curriculum Council, and my partners in this work are Dr. Flanagan and Dr. Roundtree, assistant superintendents of teaching and learning and secondary schools, respectively. Our first move is to work with those educators to define what rigor levels actually mean. And I do want everyone to know, despite what we heard here this evening, both high schools offer college prep courses, advanced college prep courses, honors courses, and advanced placement courses. Those are offered at both of our schools, regardless of how their multi-level is enacted. AP courses are standalone courses we have also conducted classroom learning walks through the Instructional Leadership Academy funded by NSF at both schools, and we continue to do that work in an ongoing manner. We have done listening sessions at both Newton North and Newton South to observe the many variations of classes that have been labeled as multi-leveled. And they are executed both multi-level classes, and we have observed single-level classes at both schools, which do exist. We have been visiting other districts, most recently Concord Carlisle. Next week, we will visit Lexington Public Schools to hear about different manners of executing high-level and rigorous courses. We've done a literature review of current thinking on multi-level classes, heterogeneous classes, and instructional design. Concurrently, we are running the first full-scale K-12 math curriculum review that the district has had in over 25 years. The purpose of this is mapping the actual standards by grade level and by level of course. So what distinguishes what is covered in an honors class versus an advanced class versus a college prep class, which is agreement about what that means, even within grade levels, departments, or buildings. We will be sending a survey to family, staff, and students in March around the mathematics and physical education curriculum review, which are up for review this year. Next year, we will have a different set of curriculum reviews to share with the public. The misconceptions that we have heard over and over as we have visited and talked with staff is that multi-level is different by school, grade, and department. And for most places in schools, the three levels I mentioned, college prep, advanced college prep, and honors exists. In some places, even more levels exist. There is no agreement about what the standards are for placement in these different levels. So depending on different teachers or different departments, and depending on the different expectations for what is called an honors class versus an accelerated class, there is scatter among the staff about what this actually means. There has not been a district-wide agreement on those definitions, and therefore different grades and departments are not fully aligned or comparable across departments, within grades, or vertically across the system. This is not the fault of teachers. This is the fault of central office leadership not making that vertical articulation expected. Students are leveled for classes based on grades and teacher recommendations, and grading practices vary, as does the rigor and skills expected in each class, so we do not have a common base upon which to make placements. The system by which we judge student mastery or level of skill varies widely. Teachers have asked in every meeting that we have had to receive more training and support around differentiation, regardless of whether we go for single level classroom leveling or multi-level leveling. Most teachers have said, I see positive outcomes to both models, but I feel ineffective and incapable of sustaining what the kids really need given the range of needs I see and our lack of training, especially post-COVID, when most cite that there was extreme change in how students became prepared to their grade levels. And some families can and do supplement their students' education through tutoring and outside supports, but others cannot and do not, creating further gaps among our student body. The current survey coming out to parents, which was done by Panorama, asked this question directly, and our strategic planning committee will review that data on Wednesday. But the average cost that families indicate that they spend on outside enrichment is between $5,000 and $10,000 that has been shared in that survey. Now, that's only 2,000 folks who did that survey. We will ask that question again in the math curriculum review survey. So if you didn't get a chance to fill it out, you can fill it out there. There's also some misunderstandings that I feel just need to be named, in that single level and multi-level classes exist at both schools at different times, and they're offered in different grades and grade levels. One school also has almost the equivalent of middle school small teams within their high schools. They are interdisciplinary, thematic-based team approaches, and in those teams, families opt into a multi-level thematic class by design because they would like to study themes across science, math, English, and technology, and therefore there's many levels of students that are placed into it. That is known to families when they opt into that model. There is, even within our multi-level classes, some misconceptions, particularly when parents speak about this to me. As a person who's well over 40, I was certainly tracked, and that is a type of leveling, and maybe that is what many parents have experienced. Folks were labeled CP, ACP, or honors, or whatever the label was, and you were tracked in all of your classes into that particular level. So for my particular strength, I was an English major eventually as a strong writer. So my English advanced status tracked me in that way for all of my classes, which was a disservice to my science teachers who had a tough time getting me to that same level. Today, we have not tracking systems, but leveling systems that are agile and allow students to have a variety of courses depending on their passions and their course loads. So for example, many times a student may take 4 honors courses and opt in a course around which they are less passionate or less prepared to take a college prep level course in that particular subject so that they do not have a burnout effect of having too many honors courses to make their lives unmanageable. Especially since many years ago, there were some suicides in Newton Public Schools that made many people take pause about the pressure on our students. There has been coaching both from students and from staff about how students have a balanced course load. So it is not necessarily true that a student choosing college prep is a student who is not capable of honors level work. I also want to say that in a multi-level class, there may be typically, let's say, an honors class that is a majority honors students, and there may be a handful of students that are one level below, meaning accelerated but not honors, who may be trying that class out. And that is what we are trying to assess the success of those programs. There are a range of learning needs within any classroom, whether they are singly leveled or multi-leveled. And we are trying to get our hands around what is actually happening for our students. But in the absence of the type of definitions for each class and level, and for criteria for students being placed within that, that is very difficult to create a district-wide system with these current conditions. Currently, tracking loss and gains in Newton is made harder by the lack of common assessments across the system. It is true that some grade level teams have developed common assessments, but not all, and they are not shared with the district or available to us to review. We are making progress with the support of the committee and the community on building the tiered system of supports, the intervention and support plans that will make it the norm for all grades, that students will get support when they struggle and can aspire to any level that they would like to participate in. We do need resources to implement these supports, and that is so that a student whose initial mastery shows that they are, say, close to honors or close to advanced, and they want to make those moves, that the supports exist within the public school system to help those young people get what they need when they need it, not as part of outside services that parents must provide. We do not, however, want to reduce the rigor of any of our courses because students simply struggle. The idea is to push the supports in, not lower the rigor of the courses. We need defined levels and common assessments to ensure that we do not do that we have not called a course advanced that is no longer advanced. We do not currently have that system reliably within the district, and that is why we cannot simply snap our fingers and go back to or go to a different system without being thoughtful and planning this next generation future system that we want for everyone. We will seek vertical alignment and coordination across grade levels. We will seek to train teachers so there's less variation in practices and more toolkits for teachers to meet the needs of students in front of them. And we owe our teachers professional learning on differentiated instruction and why students may need additional assistance. It is a back to basics in some way in terms of assessment design and alignment. It is not a typical Newton situation. Many districts, as we talk to our assistant superintendents for curriculum across the state, have to reset all of the norms post-COVID now that we have come out of the immediate crisis of achievement gaps and missed content that occurred everywhere across the nation and the world post-COVID. Our difficulty is that we don't have a prior system of aligned materials and assessments against which to benchmark. That doesn't mean we cannot get there, and we will increase the rigor from prior times, meaning our COVID times. Every district is going through that, and we will use shared assessments and teacher collaboration so that teachers will not feel alone in the pressure to meet the needs of students. The memo also outlines the timeline upon which we expect to do that. This is not just a problem in the Newton Public Schools, and therefore it is so important that we enact the ongoing cycle of K-12 curriculum review to build trust with the community and our teachers, that on a regular basis, we will continue to look at our practices and our assessments to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our students and that we are articulated to the standards across the state. We do have to move backwards a little bit from high school expectations to move forward. We also have to design backwards from our high school courses to our middle school program, because the multi-level issues before us right now are not the high school's fault alone, if you want to call it fault. We have a K-8 system underneath them that also needs alignment. And just as an example, in mapping the standards for our 4 middle schools through the curriculum math audit, there's widely varied coverage of what each of our middle schools cover. So then to level students based on varied coverage when they enter into 9th grade is very difficult, because you cannot control as a young person what was covered in your middle school or not. It is up to us in central office to fix this problem, and we need to make some decisions about the rigor of our middle school program. For example, a critical question will be, will we cover Algebra 1 by the end of 8th grade, or will we continue to have that be a 9th and 10th grade proposition in our district? All districts grapple with this conversation. We will take it on head on. And so all of this is important as we also contemplate, will we continue with integrated math classes or single strand math classes? So algebra, geometry, algebra 2. And we need to educate our families and be really transparent about what we're doing and help them and their students make balanced choices to push them to the level they need to be at when they're ready without breaking their mental health. This is not to cast aspersions on our educators. We value them, and our summary comes from interacting solely with our educators about these matters. And surely we have a lot of hard decisions to make, and that will take some time. And I appreciate the opportunity to update everyone.
Thank you very much. I'm almost afraid to ask. Does anyone have any comments or questions about, yes, Paul, I got you're first in line, about the superintendent's update? Paul, go ahead. And anybody else, please feel free to raise your hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nolan. I thought your memo was excellent and gives us and the public a good sense of what's going on and the work that you're trying to accomplish. I wanted to say a couple of things. One is what you are working on, the approach you're taking is, in my view, totally consistent with the broad objectives that we all agreed upon as a school committee and as a superintendent for your term of office as it's come. So it's very satisfying to see that you're working in that direction and the progress. And I think by laying things out in the way you have, it helps the public understand what's going on and the complexities of it. I see nothing in your report that in any way denigrates the capabilities or the efforts of our teachers. The problem, I think, as you've just said tonight, is that under previous administrations, the structure that could have been there to support the teachers, to build in consistent levels of rigor across the schools and within the schools, and to build in the common and shared assessments, could have been in place. And now we have to catch up on that with the additional complication of COVID and post-COVID changes. So I, for one, am very, very pleased to see the report. And just want to emphasize that this is not a slap on the teachers at all. In fact, if you think about what we're trying to do in the absence of those central supports and those common standards and assessments, it's truly remarkable how they've tried to go about it. I also thought your description of the mid-year data analysis is another good indication of good progress in those objectives that we all agreed upon. That will be very revealing. The idea that we're doing formative assessments 3 times during the year at the lower grade levels is new. I think most people in the education world would say that without those kind of formative assessments, where you're just relying on summative assessments like MCAS every few years, are insufficient to evaluate how the children are doing individually, by school, by class, and across the district. So I, for one, am very pleased that that's been put in place, and it's a big effort to do that. The high variability in terms of both content and achievement in elementary and middle schools is a very important consideration as we plan for those children's entry into high school. Without a common foundation and common assessments and the like, you're just shooting in the dark. when you're relying on teacher grading and recommendations, no matter how well and how hard they're trying to do those well, they're basing them on different bases. So the chance of placing a child in the right level, however we construct the levels eventually, is dramatically reduced when you don't have that information. So, sorry, Emily, that's a little long, but I really think it's important for the public to know that what's being done is consistent with what the school committee asked Dr. Nolan to do, which she basically proposed to us in her entry plan. And at least this member feels very good that there's progress being made on that. And one final thing, at least one letter we've received, one email received, has suggested that the committee should take jurisdiction over this matter and decide on this multi-level issue, how it should be revised, redesigned, and so on. And I have two reactions to that. One, that's not consistent with the statutory framework in Massachusetts, regardless of what a neighboring town may have tried to do on that. Two, there's a good reason it's not part of the statutory framework, because the idea that a 9-member body would design on particular curriculum standards, assessment standards, and the like, assuming even by majority rule we could reach an agreement, is not a good way to proceed. And third, as a matter of management and governance, the idea that we as essentially the board of directors would say to the CEO, do it this way, would actually take away from her the ultimate responsibility of the results. We would be deciding the path for the school district on very detailed implementation matters. We would own it. And then if it didn't succeed, her accountability would have been eroded by the very fact that we had done that. So at all levels, it just doesn't make sense for us to do that, in my opinion. Thanks, Emily, for the time.
Thanks, Paul. Ping?
Thank you. I apologize that I'm under weather and voice a little bit coarse. I appreciate that. By the way, I agree with Paul's general assessment. This is a very important issue, and a lot of reason, as indicated, that during the COVID and app now, so it's not easy matter that we can resolve quickly. Me for one, I was a little bit anxious when I heard the strong reaction from Newton South, and then we heard more and more input from different groups, and especially including the Newton North teachers. So, however, I think we do need to pay a lot of attention to this issue, and also as one parent who just made a comment that her child came from Louisiana State and felt that our curriculum did not have enough rigor. This might be a very individual case. So, but I look at the timeline, which is very thoughtful, and I know that a lot of steps have to be taken before we can, do some significant work to implement some new strategies to resolve those issues, which were really concerning to many faculty members, parents, and students. I just have one quick thought to see if could it be doable. Maybe we can talk to most likely Newton South High School to see if, for example, math curriculum, to see if some faculty, department folks like to come up with some ideas as kind of experiment. Because we all know it takes time, at least 1 year to listen, to understand, to come up with some strategies and planning, and this takes time. We have also other project going on, like the profile of a graduate, and also long-term strategic planning. So it's wonderful to have all these things deliberated integratedly, so we can come up with something more meaningful, more comprehensive. But meanwhile, probably we can let some experiment going on with one subject and a group of teachers. And if there's enough support from families, from students, from faculty, I think will be meaningful. So this is just my quick thought after reading this. Let me say again, this is a very difficult issue. And so I don't want to district to do something very fast, because there's no a quick solution to address these issues. But I think we could also do something to see if we can meet some urgent needs. And I thought probably math could be a field to start with. But again, I fully support our district leadership, the overall plan. And I think this is a wonderful framework we can work together. Thanks.
Thank you, Aunt Ping. If it's all, did you have something that you wanted to say? Your hand didn't go up before,
Yeah.
so it's totally fine. Go ahead, Tamika.
Thank you. So I just want to underscore the two of the points that Paul made and that An Ping made before me, that I do think it's important for us to really let resonate, which is all the thread that you picked up. There's not a thing that's in this report that is demeaning or mischaracterizing, misleading to the intention or the feelings or the sentiments of our educators. Quite the opposite, in fact. I'm not an educator, but I'm a person who's very rational and generally just very much factually based. And if you look at the text that you put together, it paints a very clear picture that you're trying to be very you're doing a delicate balance of honoring the work that's come before, but charting a path and doing so with deliberate haste, which gets to An Ping's point. So you're honoring the work that's come before you, evaluating what's necessary for us to make forward progress into the future, and you're doing so in a way that's trying to be respectful to all who are involved, the parents, the educators, the students themselves, and that's not an easy task. And so the timeline that you've put together here, it recognizes the fact that it is something that shouldn't be a snap, quick fix. It can't be. It has to be a thoughtful, methodical, very collaborative process to getting us to where we need to go. Not prejudging where the destination will be, but articulating a path for us to get there. And I think to that extent, I commend you for getting us on this path. And I do think you are going to be, it's going to be an approach that some people are going to take some of these bombastic, kind of overly sartorial approaches of undercutting the work that you're doing. But you're doing the work that needs to be done. So I appreciate that, and I thank you for that.
Rajiv?
Thank you. Anna, thank you for the memo. It's well written. It lays things out pretty well, and my colleagues have already shared some of the thoughts I was planning to share. I agree. I don't think this denigrates our educators in any way, and I think also actually demonstrates how we're factoring in the input, the feedback, the, the valid complaints, I think, about a lack of training and lack of support in trying to teach in a more complex environment. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the path we're on here. There are a couple of things I wanted to mention. One is having been very selectively quoted recently in the Boston Globe in an op-ed piece masquerading as journalism. I'll go on the record saying that. An opinion piece, and that should be thought of as an opinion piece, not as journalism. One of the things that was brought up is I said, and this was an accurate quote, that I've talked to a number of parents, and none of them have had good things to say about multi-level classes. I should add a little more kind of flavor to that. Most of these are actually, all of these parents were parents of students who are performing very highly academically in those courses, and where they see their students not being appropriately challenged. One very important piece missing from that is what is happening with students who were perhaps put on a track and are now seeing and experiencing a higher level of teaching, and are hopefully getting more interested in that subject matter. We don't know. This is the missing data, right? I think, not to prejudge anything, I think it's pretty clear that we haven't served our instructors, our educators well by not providing the training and support that was needed for teaching multi-level courses. We also don't know if they achieved their goal of helping students who were on some kind of track or level to gain more interest in that subject and move forward. So I think we need to think about that, and I know you are. I also think it would be helpful for concerned parents in the community. We acknowledge those concerns. One thing I've been saying to parents I speak to is, have you talked to the teacher? And I have to tell you, most of the time they haven't. It's a policy issue. It's something the school committee has to fix. It's something the superintendent has to fix. But a lot of them haven't talked to their student's teacher to say, my child is not being challenged enough, or my child is being challenged beyond his capacity, or whatever else might be. So I think some practical suggestions that can go from our principals and our educators. Like, we are trying to educate every child, and if there are things that are concerning to parents, the teacher is the right place to start. And hey, there's a whole chain that goes all the way up to you, Anna. So I just would say, look, I think we can help our families who have concerns with practical ways to address this, and it would also, I think, feed into the work that's being done and that's being laid out here. We understand the concerns. We think they're being addressed, and rather than at this point trying to wholesale change everything, let's make sure individual students are getting what they need, whether it's additional support or something else, and the same with our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Fuller?
Very much appreciate the stark assessment of where we are today with you and your team. The tricky part is when content, rigor, quality, consistency, alignment, professional development all feels too weak. With the timeline that unfortunately takes years. It feels like the teachers feel like it's not moving fast enough to help them if they're running ragged, and parents feel like yet another grade, yet another year in their kid's life, another 2 years talk to us about the timeline that you're looking at, why it needs such a deliberative and long, in some respects, long process, and also if the timeline requires not wholesale changes not to occur until the fall of 2026. Do you imagine that we'll be in a place to change any of the middle school decisions for the upcoming school year so that we don't lose yet another year after that? Or I know this is a Rubik's Cube.
Sure.
And I really do appreciate that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the team is here and feel free to add if you would like to, but the math curriculum review will come back to you in the spring. And to Rajiv's point and to Mayor Fuller's point, I do think we will have some recommendations that will solve things right away for next year. Now, you already helped us with an investment in the math curriculum, so we do not have to wait. So in the K-12 curriculum audit, if materials and training are purchased using those funds, we can start as soon as that decision is made. Now that's math, right? So social studies and English language arts for middle school comes next, and there will be a rolling cycle for those pieces. But I do think that we're all committed to philosophical naming of how we're going to approach it. And also, there are young people who are extremely advanced. I do have to say, at all 59 barbecues I went to, every single parent told me their child was extremely gifted and advanced. So again, the system is necessary so that we can, be true to ourselves about what it means to be gifted and advanced. And I also just want to sort of level set, we do provide high school, right? And there's calls for college courses, there's calls for other pieces. We want kids to be challenged and excited and engaged, and there's lots of ways to do that. And I also want to say our teachers are exceptional, and they do that now. We're not perpetrating harm. We are potentially not meeting every kid at their level on many sides of it. So we can start to implement faster. I think we just wanted to be realistic with folks that we can't do all subjects overnight. We started with math because it is the hottest potato, and we hear about it all the time. I don't know if either of you want to add anything else about the timeline, but okay.
And just to give you a little more credit, you actually already started with K through 5 reading or English arts, so that you're well on your way. Actually, you've tackled one really big core part, or it's underway at least. So,
and I guess if I could brag for 1 second, Madam Chair.
Of course you may.
So when you go to a curriculum deployment like the English language arts, reliably there is a significant dip in student achievement. I did not see in our winter and fall benchmarking the kind of dip I expected to see for our first year implementation for grades 3, 4, and 5 K1 and 2 for EL. Now, I'm going to keep looking, but typically there's a much bigger drop when your teachers are contending with a completely new curriculum. So I feel like it's just more evidence of the strength, but also the burden that our teachers are bearing as they take on this new challenge. But they've been handling it for a long time. And I also want to say, as being a longtime central office person, challenges come at different decades, and the Department of Ed brings us new joys often. And so I don't know what the district was contending with and spending their resources on. So I don't want it to sound like, these parts weren't happening. Other things may have been happening. The districts can't do all of it at once. So, so this is really, to me, the meat and potatoes of how we make sure that every kid gets served well by a public school.
Great, thank you. I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. We have 3 items in the consent agenda: a donation from the Mary
forgive me if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, but I think it's Elmian? Elmian? I don't. Yep. Music Enrichment Fund. We're going to also approve the January 27th meeting minutes, and there are 4 high school overnight trips. Before we vote, would anybody like to remove any items from the consent agenda? Yes, Paul.
I don't want to remove any items,
Yes.
but I actually want to make a slight amendment to the motion that we would normally make
Okay.
to approve the agenda. So maybe I'll just make that motion if I could.
Did you just want to correct something that's in the?
No, I wanted to move approval of the consent agenda
Okay.
and to add our congratulations to the Newton South Jazz Ensemble
Oh.
for 2 of the items that are part of the field trips, which is their participation in the Ellington and the, what's the other one? The Mangus?
Yep.
Mangus competitions. So that's my motion, is to approve and to add our congratulations to them.
Before we amend, is there anybody else who would like to actually take something out to discuss or to, okay, so we're good. And so is there anybody who would like to make a motion and then we can amend it? If anyone would like to make a motion on the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you on Ping. The motion is now before the committee. Paul?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move to amend the motion to add the congratulations of the school committee to the Newton South High School Jazz Ensemble and Jazz Combo in recognition of their participation in the Ellington and Mingus festivals.
I'm fine with that. Lisa, I assume that you will get it later. Good. Does anyone want to second that motion?
Yeah, let me second. Well said, by the way, Paul.
We have like 3 people who are seconding. On Ping seconds. So let's take a vote on the amended.
Oh, on the amendment first.
Yes, on the amendment first and then the amended, hopefully. Yes, I'm well aware, Paul. Thank you. We're
You're
good.
doing a heck of a job.
Thank you. I'm actually following
I
Robert's
know, you're
rules.
doing it.
Shocking. Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2 is not here. Huh, I'm Ward 2 today. Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5, that's me. Yes. Ward 6. Ward 7 is vacant. Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
Excellent. And now we have the amended motion, which has been seconded and voted on. And so let's do another roll call vote. This is for the actual consent agenda as amended. Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2 is not here. Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5 is yes. Ward 6. Ward 7 is vacant. Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Totally fine. And now we move on to our actual discussion items. And up first is the enrollment analysis report with Dr. Katie Hogan.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
All right. So you all have a printed copy of the report. There's a lot in here. I'm going to give a quick high-level overview of the main points, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions or discuss anything. Anna, do you want to say anything before I start?
I just wanted to say that the only parts not in this report, but which are usually in some configuration of this report for you, are the class arrays and class sizes reports. So this year's class sizes, next year proposed class arrays, you will have them shortly. And I propose that we meet to discuss those scenarios as part of the budget process and then discuss it with the public as well. it is a huge consideration for how we move forward with our base budget. So it's pulled out here simply because in the past, a decision was made on your behalf for which arrays to put in, which is fine. But there is a budgetary impact that I think you need to hear about. So that's why I've pulled that. Doesn't change this report for you at all.
Great, thanks. All right, so I'll just go through these main points and then, like I said, happy to take any questions. Our actual enrollment on October 1st, 2024 is the same as it was in the preliminary report when I came to talk to you in late October or early November. So it was 11,494 students, which is a decrease of 102 students from the prior school year, or a decline of negative 0.9%. We had projected last year at this time, we projected a decline of 74 students for this year, which is a decline of 6.6%. So that ends up in a variance from projection for us this year of negative 0.2%. So pretty close there. In terms of our projections for next school year, we are projecting a moderate decline of 98 students for next year, which is, again, a decline of negative 0.9%, like we saw this year, for an enrollment of 11,396 students. The decline is generally consistent across all three levels at elementary, middle, and high school. And our 5-year projection shows declines in overall enrollment in each year of the projection, although the size of the decline gets smaller in the later years, for a total number of students in 5 years from now projected at 11,176. That's in FY30. At the elementary level, our projection in the first 2 years, so next year and the year after, is a projection for a decline in elementary enrollment. And then we're projecting a slight increase over the next 3 years of the projection to end up with similar enrollment to what we have today at the elementary level. At the middle school level, we're projecting a decline in all of the years except FY27, when we are projecting a slight increase because we have a larger incoming 6th grade in that year than the prior outgoing 8th grade. And at the high school level, we're projecting declines in the next 3 years of the projection, and then a leveling off of enrollment for the last 2. In terms of the methodology, our projection methodology this year is similar to what we used last year. Grades 1 through 12 are projected by using a modified 5-year CSR, which is a cohort survival ratio. That modified 5-year omits the year of 2020 due to the impact of COVID on our enrollments. The cohort survival ratio methodology compares the number of students in a particular grade or school in 1 year to that same cohort of students in the prior year. A value of 1 for the CSR would mean that there's stability in that cohort, so there's no change in the number of students. A value less than 1 means that there is cohort decline, and a value more than 1 means that there is cohort growth for that group of students. When we use this methodology, we calculate the CSRs for each cohort of students by school and grade for each year, and then we average those. And in the current methodology, we're using that for averaging over 5 years, but we're omitting 2020. This year, we made some modifications for particular cohorts. So the grades, the kindergarten to grade 1 CSRs at each school were modified to use a 3-year average instead of our modified 5-year, so that we're omitting 2020 and 2021 for that group of, or for that ratio. And we did that because in 2021, we saw really large numbers of first graders coming in. So the K-1 ratios or cohort survival ratios for 2021 are really high. And so that made the average CSR pretty large for that group of students.
And that was due to COVID return conditions.
Thank you. Right. People who did not send their child in kindergarten during the 2020-21 school year showed up in the fall of 2021. We also modified the grades 5 through 6 or 5 to 6 CSR ratio in some schools to use a 3-year average because we are seeing some shifting patterns post-COVID in that cohort where we're seeing fewer students withdrawing from grade 5 to grade 6. We used to see a large number of students withdraw to go to private school in middle school, and that seems to be shifting slightly. We use a different methodology to project kindergarten, but we're using the same one for this year or for the 5-year projections in this book that we've used in recent years. We use an adjusted 3-year average of the prior kindergarten enrollments by school. So we look at the average kindergarten enrollment for the past 3 years for each school, and then we add new enrolling students from our MECO program and new residential developments. And then we sum those numbers across all schools to come up with a total kindergarten projection. Then we compare that to the number of Newton resident births 5 years prior to calculate a birth to K ratio. And those are displayed. We have a history of that displayed on page 21 in the book, if you want to take a look at that. This year, we had a larger than projected kindergarten for a year or a cohort of students that had a really small number of births. So we ended up with a really large birth to K ratio for the current kindergarten class of 1.21. That's much larger than any birth to K ratio that we've seen in recent years, even in our large growth years where we had kindergartens over 900 students. So our kindergarten projections have been adjusted slightly to have slightly higher birth to K ratios than we would get if we just use the average methodology that I just talked about, because we're seeing potentially a shift. It's 1 year. It may just be a 1-year fluke. We're not sure yet, but we have adjusted them up just a little bit. In terms of the accuracy of our projections, we measure that by looking at variance from projection. So we're looking at how different actual enrollment is from what we projected in the prior year. As I mentioned at the beginning, our overall variance from projection this year was negative 0.2%. That was pretty similar across levels. So at the elementary level, it was negative 0.2%. The middle school was negative 0.1%, and the high school is negative 0.4%. There's some more information on variance from projection in the book if you're interested. And then finally, we also compare our projections to an external projection from NESDEC, which is the New England School Development Council, something like close to that. There's detail on those projections on pages 21 to 24 and page 109 in the book. Our projections for the next 5 years are slightly higher than NESDEC's, and the difference gets larger over the 5 years because we're projecting a larger kindergarten than NESDEC for next year. And then that continues through the projection. So that larger K moves on to grade 1 and increases that difference between our projections and NESDEC's. So that's everything that, those are sort of the high level pieces. I'm happy to take questions or elaborate.
There were some member questions, Madam Chair, which I have some answers to, but I don't know if those members want to ask them now or want me to recap them or, so one was about this matter of the 6th grade cohort. So the question was, in middle school, the individual cohorts of students in non-public schools in grades 6 and 7 increased from the prior year, which is typical for Newton, but the 8th grade decreased. Do you mean that the size of the grade 6 cohort in non-public schools in 24 was higher than 23? Or that the number of children in non-public schools in this grade 6 cohort was higher than it was when the kids were in grade 5? And so the answer is the second part of that. The number of children in the 2024 grade 6 cohort compared to the grade 5 in the prior year. So I hope that reference clears that up. It's table 18, right?
Yeah, I was just going to add in the non-public school enrollment section in the book, in table 18, we look at both change in just the grade level from year to year, and then we also look at cohort change. So looking at the same group of students as they move from one grade to the next.
And then the other question was about grade 2. The grade 2 cohort is small, but the other two are larger. Do we have any theories for the non-public numbers increased in grade 3 and 5? Particularly interested in the grade 5 cohort, which showed a relatively large increase. This member posits, I don't believe anything changed in the external world to make a an exit more likely. And we didn't have any great theories either, I guess is really, is really it. We were like, yeah. So there wasn't anything that really jumped out at us, from withdrawals to transfers to matriculation. But Katie did advise that we are still validating the data from January 25 and the non-public school census. So maybe there'll be some development from that.
Yep, and I'll just add, I will come back in April to talk about the January 2025 non-public school census, so you don't have to wait an entire year for the next book to hear about the data from that data collection.
And I will share these answers with all the members, just so everybody knows what was asked. There were just a couple more, if you, okay. So there was a question about, we conducted a survey of parents who had left Newton Public Schools, and were there any major considerations that we learned about? And I should just say there are none that will surprise the committee. COVID issues was really big in terms of what people said. Now, mind you, I did this last spring. I interviewed these families last spring. And so, and they'd already made the decision to leave, right? And so let's just say love was not raining down upon all the answers that were given. We'll say that. But COVID was the first. Then there was some mention about religious teaching and the teaching in the public schools at odds with some religious beliefs, but that was not number one. COVID was number one. And the second really affirms what we've heard in other places about previously high school class sizes, which we have worked as a committee to address, affirming issues heard in other forums like more advanced student options, need for general ed support at the elementary level, and to catch up because of the post-pandemic needs. So those were all mentioned in the survey. And then there was a question about sort of outreach to pre-K families and trying to make folks get snuggled into our fold before they matriculate. And I do want to say that new this year with Parent Square, anyone can subscribe to the district news and get those updates. And next year, the Family Engagement Office under Miss Maryland will do two things that will allow families to understand the beat of their neighborhood school before they matriculate. One, a coordinated Google Calendar of sort of what's happening that just rolls right to the main front piece. And then second, the post from the building, the weekly post from the building, will be automated to post directly to the website, so that those just known activities will just, there'll be just the loop of the life of the school will be evident to anyone who wants to visit the site. Those were all those were the questions.
Great, thank you. And now I'll open up to members. If you want to raise your hand. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Paul.
Thank you, Katie and Anna, for answering all those questions I sent in beforehand. I've always viewed the non-public section of this report as kind of a bellwether of how we're doing compared to other options that families have. And there are a lot of reasons families go to other schools, and I understand that. And I think it's good that the overall percentage of non-public enrollment has decreased as an indication of more public confidence, as one indication of more public confidence in the schools. It's gone from 22.3 to 21.9%. But that's still above the historical, the long historical average of about 19%. I think some of that's to be expected as some percentage of parents who left us during COVID were not likely and are not likely quickly to reverse course, especially if they're in a school that gives them an automatic progression from elementary to middle or middle to high school. And so some of that's explainable, that some of the lag compared to where we were before, I think is explained by that. But I think we need to remember that the 3 percentage point difference, more or less, between from historical patterns to today equals over 400 children who in the historical period would have been with us, whose families, to the extent they're going to private school, are choosing to spend in total in the range of $15 million in tuition. If we assumed all those people were going to private school, maybe it's not 15, maybe it's 10, or whatever. So they're voting with their feet and with their post-tax dollars. Some people, as Dr. Nolan was saying before, seem to be spending thousands of dollars to stay in the system and are supplementing. I think you said $5 to $10,000. That's astounding on top of what they're paying in property taxes. So to whatever extent that's meaningful about confidence in us versus habit versus new patterns and so on, it's something I think we still want to keep an eye on. Because as we know, Mayor Fuller knows this as well as anybody, once you're out of the system, you tend to have less support for the kind of funding and other community support that is important for the future development of our schools. So I'm not casting aspersions at all. I'm just saying I think we want to keep an eye on that. And my hope is with the work we've talked about tonight and the other work we're going to be doing over the coming years, that we'll see a gradual return to that old average and maybe even better. And that when that happens, we can properly judge that we've restored community confidence in our school system. Something I'm looking forward to.
Me too. Madam Chair, if I may. I did ask in the private school chatbot interviews, is there anything that we could do to get you to come back to the Newton Public Schools? And the answer was usually a resounding no with like 1 million exclamation points, because they had made a shift and there was a lot of language about, I don't want to uproot my child again. There's a continuity here. COVID was already hard enough, that kind of thing. So I guess I just want to say I feel deep pressure to mobilize the support and the enrichment options that, have been noted in various contexts, and we really need, I'm worried about the tensions on our budget in order to bring that promise to these families. And, we can solve these problems. We must, otherwise we may continue to lose folks because we can't provide the same breadth of services.
Tamika?
So I just have a follow-up thought related to your last statement and something you said earlier in the superintendent update. So in the superintendent update, you'd said that outside supplements had the tendency to exacerbate the gaps that we're seeing. So as an educator, how do you, and I'm so sorry, Katie, this is a little side stream from your presentation directly, but as an educator, how do you kind of approach that inherent disconnect where additional supplementation is going to exacerbate the gap for those who aren't able to even meet basic standards?
Well,
something that struck me then. I
yeah.
forgot about it.
Yep. Well, there's a couple things. So one, I would say to you that the enrichment market, and you heard this during the NCE discussions, the enrichment market has become flooded with more options than ever that used to be handled solely by the public school. So I think COVID has created a whole marketplace of tutoring, college counseling, all of those pieces. I mean, that's why we enacted varsity tutors, so that we could at least have some options for everyone and not leave it to those folks who had the cash to do that. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part is once we really have a handle on individual students and where they actually are related to needs, I hope that we're going to start to build trust that you don't have to accelerate your child through these things. We're going to tell you what the gaps are, and we're going to help you with those. The problem right now, and we're going to come to you with a budget proposal that shows you additional ways to do this. How can we provide those real-time supports and extensions for those advanced students within the school day so that there isn't the need then to go to the outside vendor for additional math tutoring and those types of things. We have not won the public trust yet because we have not defined that system. So we're at our best when our families know what the system is and take advantage of it. So that's what I'm after, the menu of options that your local public school offers so that people can get what they need, not outsourcing if you can.
Thank you. And apologies, Katie. I do have a question for you. Emily, can I go ahead? Okay. So thank you for the report. I had a thought about the way that we're capturing the variance year to year for our Medco students. Have we ever included, I know we include them in the overall projections as new students or just total students, but do we plus minus kind of have a snapshot there? And I apologize if it's here and I just missed it.
Let me
So
make sure I am.
changes.
Well, so the way that we do the MECO projections, I actually calculate CSRs for MECO students as well using 5 years of historical data. I mean, we have many more, but I replicate the same methodology that we're using for grades for resident students 1 through 12. And then they are added into each school. So we are adding new incoming students to the program, and we're using the 5-year patterns of students coming and leaving in other grade levels through the CSRs to add them or keep them in the schools where they're currently attending and then moving into middle and high school. Does that answer your question? Or are you asking, you want to see more like what happens to the cohort of students over
Individual
time?
schools and just,
Okay.
so if I'm looking at Cabot here.
Yes.
I see that includes, that the numbers or totals include 7 Metco students, but I don't know if that's an increase, a decrease from the previous
Okay.
year, that type thing. And just understanding where we have capacity for additional students. And perhaps that's more applicable to the class size, array that we'll be getting soon. But
What we do, I mean,
that's what I was referring to.
sure. We have in Appendix A, we do have a table for the breakdown of numbers of students participating in the MECO program by grade in school, but it's only a 1-year look. So we could next year append that to look at sort of a historical trend if that would be useful. We do, I don't know, Anna, if you want to jump in here, in terms of, the numbers of new students that we request from MECO Inc. and what we end up getting.
So you should know that DESE has made a change in how they allow us to capture enrollees. There's a lot of changes at because DESE has become more intimately involved with MECO. One of those changes is that we used to have X number of students. That reduced during COVID. And they have like a rolling 5-year capture of what they will allow you to consider your base program. And it's not the same number we had pre-COVID anymore. So
You mean the overall pool
overall
of students,
pool of
MECO
students that we are allowed to have and be reimbursed for.
Huh.
So I, of course, do what I do, which is said, oh no, you will give us the cash and the slots for that. And they said, no, that's an expansion now of your program. And Lisa fainted. And then I said, it's not an expansion, it's a restoration. And so all the superintendents are saying the same thing, that COVID basically reduced our allocation without a reduction of the allocation. So we're fighting about that. And METCO is level funded this year, so we're fighting over non-existent dollars. So that's where we sit.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
So Mayor Fuller and then on Ping.
I'll add one more nuance to the discussion about all of this. And Katie, a huge thank you for your amazing work again, and the comprehensiveness and the accuracy of the current data, and how close the projections end up being to reality. So thank you. Housing costs in Newton are crazy high, and they keep getting crazier higher. I was trying to find, I didn't want to do it by memory, but I believe our median house price is something like close to 1.8 or $1.9 million. That's the median. And the demographic trends, of number of children per household. No wonder everybody's having fewer kids with the cost of living just so crazy high. What also is hurting us in Newton is there are certain people who are buying the condos or the houses who are stretching really, 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 really hard to be able to buy into Newton, usually because of our schools. And there are others who are comfortably able to buy those homes. If they're comfortably able to buy those homes, they have the financial privilege and means to seriously consider the private school tuitions with the usually even lower class sizes than we offer here in Newton, in the Newton Public Schools. I believe deeply in the Newton Public Schools, but as our housing prices keep going up, and it doesn't, by the way, go up 3 or 4% a year traditionally. Again, I wish I had the report right in front of me. Housing prices go up 6 or 7% year after year after year. It's phenomenal what's happening. So we have a statewide crisis on our hands, and it's somewhat reassuring that, in fact, the percentage of parents opting for the private schools is coming down a bit from those pre-peak pandemic years, but I share your concern about what will be the new normal, and I'm not sure, because I think the housing costs going up contravene the theory that maybe it's going down. So I just wanted to add that nuance in. And I would also just add, it's in Katie's report, sales, the growth market in Newton is actually condos.
Yeah.
We are building more condos here in a variety of different ways. We've never had a lot of 2 or 3 families. They have gone down, many of them shifting over and repurposed into condos. The single families have stayed fair. The number of them are fairly stable. But the number of our kiddos who are living in apartments or condos as a percentage is going up, and it makes total sense, the economics of it. It's all logical, but even the condos are 800,000 or 900,000 is the median value. They're crazy expensive. Just another layer to all of this.
Thank you. On Ping?
Thank you. I certainly have same feeling as Mayor mentioned about the market here. So if the average single family house is 1.8 or 1.9 million, it's incredible. Katie, thank you again for this comprehensive report. It's really, really a lot of data, deep analysis, tremendous work. Really appreciate that. And looking at the past 6 years a change, including the surrounding districts, Newton has 9% decrease, even though not the highest, but still it's concerning, right? Wellesley is outlier, 18%, and Brookline 10%. Then we are the third highest decrease. Just to double check, Katie, you mentioned that we currently have 0.9% decrease, and next few years look like again 0.8, 0.9 decrease. Is that right?
For the projections?
Yeah, based on your projections.
Yeah, yes. So next year we're projecting a decrease of 0.9%. In the following year it's 0.8, then 0.6, then 0.2, and then 0.3.
Okay, so hopefully the next 5-6 years the decrease will not be 9%, probably 4 or 5%, right? Because 9% decrease, that's really alarming, right? That's school enrollment will not be sustainable. I don't know, 20 years or 30 years. But again, this is something we have to do. Probably you folks all have heard when the community discussion about the project, the housing, project, some people still saying, well, we have so many projects, so many housing, and now so many students will come in. And I always kind of chuckle a little bit. Well, we have decreasing student population. It's not like we have too many students, or as Mayor said, the kiddos, come in. So I think we should spread the word, even though with all these, our residential housing complexes. Katie, here you list about, I don't know, about 15, 20-ish. Now, recently we read about Northland, based on the mayor's the community newsletter. The Riverside project seems still kind of not finalized yet. Is that true, Mayor? This project will still be pushed a little bit later and later?
Northland is back in front of the city council as we speak to eliminate the office element and make it essentially 100% housing, a tiny little bit of retail. But it is been moving forward. If you're over on Needham Street, you've seen continuous construction. I think they're moving more slowly than they would have liked 5 years ago. Riverside is more complicated. They have not started any construction, and they're coming back in again, same thing, to eliminate the office/lab space and make it 100% housing. But that one has not reappeared, and I'm not sure exactly when it will reappear. So that one's more iffy at the moment. And those are the two largest for Newton. So
Yeah.
besides, it's going to be quite a while, I think, before we see kids at Countryside. I think you'll see kids at Williams. It's still years away. And various, obviously, the middle and highs, the corresponding middles and highs.
Thanks for that input. So, Katie, so we include these housing projects, but so it seems a little bit still optimistic, right? All these numbers, like Riverside Station with 550 units. So I don't know for other projects, they are all on solid ground, or some numbers could still change. But my point is, with all these projects, even though they are fully materialized, the number, overall student enrollment number is still not going higher. It's amazing. If without these projects, now we were in serious trouble. The last point, couple weeks ago, I had a conversation with one couple parents. They're complaining about some curriculum issues, and the parents said, well, look, more and more parents are taking their kids to the private schools. And then he quoted number 25%. I said that number seems a little bit higher. So, Katie, you helped me to get the number. So for the current year, if I recall correctly, it's about between 20 and 21%, right?
So that is as of the January 2024 census, because we're currently validating all the data for January 2025. But overall, for 2024, it's 21.9%.
Okay. So, my memory might be a little bit vague. I kind of recall that, say, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, the private school student population could be about 15% ish. I don't know if you have any knowledge. The population, the percentage of students going to private schools is going a little bit high the past decade or so.
Yep, we have a graph on page 89 in the report that shows the percentage of students enrolled in non-public schools starting in 1994 through the current year. So it's fluctuated, it has increased post-COVID. It was around between 16 to 18% was our typical percentage over that time period. And then it bumped up during COVID. And as Paul mentioned in his comment, it's starting to come down, but it's still above that historical.
Okay, so my memory seems still on the target. So, but now it's 20, almost close to 21%. So when you do the projection for the following years, what kind of percentage do you use for this projection in terms of private school students enrollment percentage?
So when we do the projection for enrollment in NPS for the next 5 years, we're using the cohort survival ratios, which take into account the patterns of in and out migration that we see for students, whether it's withdrawing to go to private school or to move out of Newton or to move out of the country, or students coming in from other places. So we incorporate it in that way and looking at the 5-year trends, but we don't calculate a projected percentage of students in private school for future years.
I see. I got it. Okay. Well, certainly, we hope that the percentage will not go any higher, but of course, people use their feet to vote, as the common saying goes, and that's put a little bit pressure on us, to do a better job. Hopefully, but overall, Mayor, you mentioned that the housing, price going high, and the good school system is main attraction for many parents, and we all receive those letters during the teacher strike and other times that many parents said we moved to Newton because a good school system, and so it's a little bit interesting to think about that. On the one hand, some parents said more kids going to private school. On the other hand, if many letters come in saying that we move in, made a huge sacrifice because we believe the Newton school system in the high quality of school system. That's why we move here. So, but again, Katie, and thank you so much for this wonderful report. And it serves many purposes and will enrich our discussion. about the future of our school enrollment and other issues. Thank you.
So I'm just going to interrupt for a second. And Barry, you are definitely next because you haven't had a chance to speak yet. I'm mindful it's 8:30 and we have 2 more discussion items, one that I think may be pretty meaty. So I would ask if it's okay with everyone after Barry that we move on to the next topic. If it's like this big, but let's let Barry go first and then you get your this big question. All right, go ahead, Barry.
I'm going to be pretty quick. Initially, I was going to ask a special education related question because I couldn't remember where it was, but I found it after flipping through it 50 times. I found it again. So I need to look at it again before I ask a question. In general, I feel like there's some additional information that would be interesting to see. I don't know if it could be shared here. I'd be curious of the percent of kids receiving special education, how many of them were identified by the school, how many were identified by parents, how many were denied by the school and then came back and got services, how many, I think we have how many left the system because that's in the private area. But it would be interesting to see that and to understand how we're navigating identifying kids, how early we're identifying them, and they're getting the services they need. And then how much of a struggle is it for a parent to get or a guardian to get the services they need for their kid? And I feel like that some could be in here somewhere.
So are you referring to private school attending folks or all kids?
No, all kids.
Okay, so we are collecting the data as of last year for who asks for the referral to special education testing, parent or staff member, and what is the qualification rate on each of those types of asks. When I came and shared with you the data about how many evaluations our school psychs do for private schools, we started collecting that data. So I can give you those percentages. What I can't tell you is what happened after that if they were not qualified by us. How you said how else they get services or what have you.
Yeah, no, I mean, so there is you're denied by the school and then maybe the parent goes, I disagree with that. And then they come back with additional testing and then they're approved. So how often does that happen?
That I'll have to find out if we even track that. So, yeah. Okay.
It would be interesting because and the reason I'm asking is what's on my mind, having experienced it myself transparently, is the struggle that it creates in the family dynamic when your kid isn't getting what they need, and then you're left as a parent confused by the situation, and then struggle to finally do get them what they need. But there's that gap where we're creating a situation that we don't need to create for the family. And if there's something interesting in those data, is there an opportunity for making improvement in that process?
I don't think we track that, but I'm going to ask questions.
And if we don't, maybe we can, so we have it for the future. And then my last comment was just about the comment at the 5 to 10K that parents spend. And I know you didn't mean it, so I just adding onto it. It was mentioned for our advanced kids. It's not just advanced kids that people are spending money on. It's all
No,
types.
this is every type of
yeah,
kid.
I just wanted to say it publicly that, plenty of us spend quite a bit of money on, and not to say my kid is advanced or not, but you spend money to do whatever you can to get your kid what they need.
Excellent clarification.
If you can.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Tamika's small question.
No promises. Good point. Good point, Barry. So I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the Appendix A on page 95. I have a question about the this table 1, enrollments by race and ethnicity by school. Am I reading it correctly that at Ward School we have zero African American or Black students attending, or is that just it's so small that the number is opaque in some respect?
I would need to double check that to confirm, but I believe that it is 0 because we do adjust for if it's less than 1%, we'll make it a point. We'll adjust it to show 1 decimal point.
Yeah.
However, I need to go back and confirm that maybe it just is a formatting error or not. I will we'll let you know.
I appreciate that. It's an anomaly for sure in a district this size and a school that size. So thank you.
That was an excellent small question. Thank you. It's important. Very important, seriously.
Before 9 o'clock.
Trying. We'll try. All right. Next, we move on to the competency determination first read.
Okay.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Yes.
Katie.
Oh my goodness, Katie, thank you so much for the huge amount of work you put into that. We appreciate it.
It's an
every
incredible
year.
report.
Thank you.
Incredible. I used to dream of reports. So while this is a first read of us to formally consider the policy, we read it last meeting, so it's not really a first read. So I challenge us that if we're ready to vote tonight after answering questions, let's do that. I did just want to clear up one misconception before we dive into this conversation. So 2 staff members emailed me about this, and 1 NTA leader asked me about this, and Emily, actually, we were standing together when this was asked of us. There was some sort of misconception that we were recommending MCAS to become a graduation or a competency requirement at our last meeting. And I just want to reassure the public and make it very crystal clear that no one has recommended that, and that is not on the table for the competency determination. And we are simply talking tonight about whether or not to approve standards for the class of 2025 and the class of 2026, possibly, if you choose to do that tonight. And those 2 classes had MCAS in their lives up through grade 11. So some of them have passed MCAS, and we are allowed to still count that as a competency determination that has already been won by those individuals. The memo last week sought to signal that to those families and students so that they didn't think they took and passed MCAS for nothing, and that that still counted for the competency determination. So there weren't new standards placed on those people who had already passed. So I hope that clears it up. I also want everyone to know that we try to do all our business right on camera. So you heard that some questions were given to us in advance, so Katie and I could do some research and come to the meeting with the answers. So we knew that school committee members last time were going to ask us, can we have MCAS as a graduation requirement? Because constituents in the city have been asking school committee members that question. And so we answered it on camera, and the answer is yes, we could. But the other part of it is no one here has suggested that as a potential at this time. So I just wanted to clear that up. There was some worry that somehow we were going to reverse course and have MCAS as a requirement. We're not doing that. Nothing has changed about this memo except I think a little bit more clarity around that. The only section that we changed was the section called Current Members of the MPS Class of 2025. And therein, we more clearly said that if you have already earned a CD through passing the MCAS, that still counts. And then secondly, if you didn't pass the MCAS in the class of 2025, we will locally certify your coursework, and the coursework is detailed exactly as it was detailed for you before. The scope of individuals that this will affect this year is very small, less than 3 students. So for 2026, it will be similarly small, but we will have a year of running room to address any issues that may come up for this. The highest number of issues with this is students who are ELL students who come in late in their high school career and don't have the English language skills yet to matriculate to a formal English language arts course. So I would encourage you that you have several options tonight if you so choose. One, you can do nothing and kick it to next week. I would urge you not to do that. Kids are waiting to know what's happening. You could vote just the plan for 2025. You could vote it for 25 and 26, or you could wait on 26 and beyond for the governor's recommendations and DESE's recommendation. An informal chat with some DESE board members in recent weeks indicates to me that no recommendations will be coming from them that are more restrictive than what we have proposed. Now, anything can happen these days, right? So my recommendation to you is to vote this plan for 25 and for 26.
Just a quick question about the 26. So if we're voting for, I understand 25, if we're voting for 26, we're saying we're going to wait until we hear from the task force, or?
I would say you can vote exactly what we do for 25
Oh,
for 26.
to copy it. Got it.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
I understand.
Thanks for the clarification about what was and what wasn't proposed, because it raised a lot of hackles, unfortunately unnecessarily, because it gave the impression that we might want to contravene what the people of the state had voted on, and I don't think we have any interest in, I know we have no interest in doing that. I'm very comfortable with your recommendation with regard to 25 and 26 both. I've been watching the DESI meetings. I have to nowadays. I watch the DESI meetings and the discussions on this. And I think two things are clear. One is the point you just made, that they are highly unlikely to decide on something that's more stringent than we are recommending here. And two, it's also highly likely that it's going to take them a while to figure it out. And so to the extent that we can offer advice to faculty and students about the 26 graduates now, so that we can help those kids who need it to get to their graduation requirements, I think that's a wise thing to do. And as you suggested, the number for this year is tiny. I think in Newton, the number has always been tiny with regard to even if we're passing MCAS, and it's likely to be small again next year. So I'm really comfortable with your recommendation. I just want to check on one thing with regard to the wording. Oh, first of all, MCASs will still be given, right? Because under the state ed reform law, they're used to find which districts are sub-performing and to allocate state money, right? Isn't that the theory of it originally?
It's also for federal accountability purposes, so.
Well, I'm not sure we'll have that anymore, but
Yeah,
at the state
unsure.
level.
It appears it will still be administered at this time, yes.
Yeah. In the language, the second line, local certification has been certified by the student's district.
Mm-hmm.
Did you use that language because in the case of NPS students, it's NPS, but in the case of someone who's moved in from elsewhere,
Correct.
it's their other state or nation?
Or
I mean, that's
or
what
another district from which they had in Massachusetts even.
right.
Yeah.
So when you say definition of high school level
Mm-hmm.
on the next page,
Correct.
that's why you have that language.
That's right.
Because at first I was wondering, why don't we just say the NPS courses?
Mm-hmm.
But there are students who are coming in from
Yes.
elsewhere. So Emily, I'm very comfortable with voting this today for 25 and 26, if that's the will of the group.
My question was really why we have this labeled as a first read. I wasn't at the previous meeting, but I did watch the recording, and so I think this is a second read. And just to keep it short, I agree with Paul. I think the standards that Anna and team have recommended for the class of 2025 should also be applied to the class of 2026. Number one, to reduce uncertainty for those students and their families. And number two, not only do we not know how long the DESI process will take, but there is the possibility that DESI will have even bigger issues to deal with over the next period of time. And so I wouldn't necessarily put anything on hold pending something from DESI, because there's a lot going on.
Thank you. Tamika?
Thank you. So I'm happy to heed your recommendation, and I'm also happy for us to vote tonight. I agree, it's less of a first read and more as a more clear second read.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a comment about some of the miscommunications or the mischaracterizations of what the committee was considering doing, which is, as I said, this is a clarification and a very good clarification of exactly what your recommendation is. And I think that's key, being extremely clear and sharp about what it is you are putting forward for this committee to consider and vote on. And in our previous conversation, you talked about a whole bunch of things that other districts are doing, and that was good information for us to know and to have as part of the overall kind of aura of the discussion we were having, or the backdrop, I should say. But I do see how folks kind of just not really tuning in so much as overhearing or having second, third hand kind of paraphrasing of what we discussed. I see how it could have been that somebody might have gotten the wrong idea about what your recommendation as the educational leader was to this committee. And so to that, most important thing is to be as clear and crystal clear about what your recommendation is, and just a exposition of the facts. The facts were that we considered graduation requirements. The facts were that I recommended that we have a pathway for those who've already passed MCAS and a pathway for those who need to have a competency determination in hand. And so I think to the extent that your communications, you got there, you were able to push out some information that this is exactly what you're recommending. I think that's always the best approach. And, you know, it's unfortunate that we all kind of witnessed or bore witness to the fact that sometimes communications, people are at cross understandings here, but just falling back on what you actually said and being thorough and clear on the recommendation that you're putting forward. So with that, I would love to make a motion. I move that we approve the new competency determination for Newton Public Schools for the class of 2025 and the class of 2026. Anything more tight than that?
Second.
Any discussion before we vote? Yes.
I'm assuming this also includes for prior students who did not complete the competency. Just wanted to make sure that it's the class of 2027 where we'll have to figure out how things work. But I just wanted to make sure that we're covering class of 2025, 2026, prior students, and leaving what Dr. Nolan has recommended for the class of 2027 and beyond untouched. I'm good.
Okay. I haven't said much at all this meeting, running it and not talking about it, but I also, you know, fundamentally support both 2025 and 2026 and the language that's proposed in this memo. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? No more discussion. Let's do a roll call vote. Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2 is absent. Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5 is me. Yes. Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7 is vacant. Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Yes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, so when we do this again, so a member did request from me, what are districts around us doing? So I just want to, when we do this again, let's do that in a separate meeting from when we vote it, so that there's no confusion about what we're recommending.
Moving on to our last, and thank you for patiently waiting through our meeting. So the last agenda item is the discussion and the possible vote, hopefully, yes, the vote, for a school committee to recognize both boys and girls ultimate teams at Newton North and Newton South.
Amy Mistro is with us from the business office, who's been helping us, again, organizing all of our business practices and making sure that we're recognizing the children who are actually playing sports under our umbrella.
Amy, do you have anything to add?
Hi, everybody. The memo is submitted.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Amy, come back to us.
As a club at Newton North, including Newton South students. It has grown to a level of participation that really demands it to be recognized as a sport at this point for your consideration. As well, Newton South has tested their school base, and they have 66 students who are interested in a team at Newton South. To be able to budget appropriately for the expenses of both schools, we're asking for the recognition of both programs as well, which will allow for us to collect the athletic fees associated for the participating students. Happy to answer any specific questions you may have.
And if I may add, Madam Chair, we do not consider teacher and coach time free. We want to compensate them in accordance with our collective bargaining agreements, and taking these teams under our umbrella allow us to do that.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
Just, I don't know if it's the superintendent or Amy. What other club teams do we have that might also have a similar request? Just curious.
I'm not sure I know of any. Do you, Amy? Just a couple?
There could be several. We could respond with, I'd rather check and respond with a firm answer rather than guess. There is a process that both schools entertain where they start at a club level to test that there is viable participation before bringing it forward to be recognized. In speaking with both schools, this is the interest that they brought forward at this time. They do have a couple of others that they're looking to potentially start, but they did not raise an interest right now to have anything else recognized.
We would have some running room before the next collective bargaining agreement to, usually each negotiation cycle that would be forecasted. This one has been running for a while and it should be incorporated.
I'll just put in 2 thumbs up. The level of enthusiasm and achievement and inclusivity of Ultimate Frisbee is amazing. And I think it serves the social and emotional and athletic and recreational needs of students who might not otherwise participate in other sports. And so count me as a yes when the vote comes.
Paul?
Let me toss in the same. And I just want to say, for those who haven't watched or participated, it's a remarkable sport. As one of the students pointed out today, there are no referees. And so if you're playing and you feel you've been fouled, you raise your hand. Play stops. The 2 people, the one who might have fouled and the foulee, so to speak, have a discussion as to what actually happened. And they reach an agreement. And if they don't reach an agreement, then the play goes back to the previous place. It's the only competitive sport I know of that behaves in that way. Also, at the end of the game, the 2 teams get together, locking arms usually, and spend the next several minutes complimenting the other team on the way they played. It is the ultimate in sportsmanship, and it's such a wonderful example for the students and people watching. So, Emily, I'd like to move approval of the item, if I may.
Can we allow for a little more discussion?
Sure.
Because
Oh,
there
no,
are others who are, I mean, we can.
No,
we
I
can- we
didn't-
can
I
move
didn't make the
question,
motion.
and We can,
That was
you made the
somebody.
motion, you made the motion. Let's second and then we'll have discussion.
I'll second it, and then can I say something too?
Barry, and you may open.
Yeah, I just want to say, living very close to the Newton South fields, the Ultimate Frisbee kids, when they do get on there, are the most respectful and delightful kids to play on that field. If we all had more Ultimate Frisbee games in our lives, I think we would be less stressed. So I am for it.
Any other comments?
Emily, just a quick question.
Yep.
So now this is no longer a student club activity. It's a interscholastic athletic team. So here I saw the Amy, your memo saying which is estimated at approximately $24,000. So this is you need to have this amount of money to support these teams, or we will raise this money, or school committee, as MPS will pay this money. So just explain a little bit more what kind of financial obligation we will have. So at least I have some information in my mind.
Sure. It's about $25,000 to run both teams between coaching stipends, transportation, uniforms, and official expenses. And any dues that we, for participation in the USA Ultimate League, which is what this sport runs through. That's for both schools. The 24,000 that's referenced in the memo is for is revenue that would come in from participating students. Currently, because it's not a recognized sport, we don't collect the fees from the participating students. Your recognition would allow us to do so. That estimate is based upon what we anticipate participation would be, also allowing for some realm of somewhere between 16 and 20% of students who might qualify for waivers, so that our total revenue would come down to allow for them to participate as well.
So overall, what could be the estimate of this MPS financial?
If we say it's
obligation?
50,000 to run both, and we're going to defer 24,000 with the fees, it would be about 26,000. I've been working very closely with both athletic programs in the last couple of years relative to their budget planning, and we feel that they have room in both of their budgets to do this going forward.
Okay, thanks.
So it's
By the way, as a
athletic
parent
revolving.
of two kids went through this, varsity teams, I enthusiastically support to have these, 4 teams for both high schools.
So just for clarity, it's in the athletic revolving accounts and not in the operating budget.
So I just want to
Thanks.
just briefly that my son was also in the not even club, but completely unaffiliated, solely run by students, no advisors at all. And I completely agree with Mayor Fuller. It provides a home for kids who are not interested in sort of traditional sports. My son also raced go-karts. So like that's, it's that crowd. So I'm thrilled that this is actually happening at Newton North and Newton South. And with that, any other comments or questions? Mika.
Well, I just want to say how remarkable it was that the students who came in support of this this motion, this vote, came even though they're advocating for paying these fees themselves. I think it's a real testament to how strong this sport is and how fun and unifying. So thank you.
Really agree. Anyone else? Nope, we have a motion that is already on the floor. I will do a roll call vote. Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2 is absent. Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5 is me. That's yes. Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7 is vacant. Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
Passes. We now have an alternate frisbee team. I'm so thrilled. Yes, congratulations. And
Thanks, everybody.
that concludes our business for tonight's meeting.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you all. Have a good night.